It always happens at 3:07 a.m. 3 knocks. Slow, precise, hollow, not frantic, not urgent, just deliberate. Families from different towns, different continents, report the exact same experience. They're asleep, then something stirs them awake. Not a nightmare, not a sound from inside, but a presence. Outside, knocking, the door's locked, the cameras are rolling, nothing shows, but everyone hears it. 3 knocks, always 3, then silence. Some say if you stay in bed, if you ignore it, the knocking won't return. But those who open the door, even just once, they begin to hear footsteps, not outside. Inside the walls, slow, measured, following them room to room, as if something made its way in and is now pacing along the inside of their home, searching for the next door. The first official report came from a quiet suburb in Pennsylvania. A man named Harlan woke up one night at 3:07 a.m., convinced someone was at his door. 3 knocks, measured, like a metronome wrapped in wood. He checked the cameras. Nothing. No one at the porch. No movement. No light trigger. But the sound was real, recorded clearly on the home security mic. He didn't open the door. He simply went back to sleep. The next night, same time, same 3 knocks. Only this time, they came from the back door. Still, no footage. No sign of tampering. But Harlan swore the air felt wrong, like the house itself was holding its breath. By the 3rd night, he called the police. They found no one, but a few days later, 3 more families in the neighborhood reported the same experience. Waking up at exactly 3:07, knocking. No intruder, no break-ins, no explanation. The phenomenon soon spread. Different towns, different countries, no common religion, language, or background, but always the same pattern. 三点7分, 3 knocks, 3 nights in a row, and then footsteps from the walls. Most people ignored the knocking, and nothing happened, but a few out of fear, confusion, or sheer instinct opened the door. Not wide, just a crack, just enough to confirm what they already suspected. No one was there, or so they thought. One woman in Alberta left her porch light on and opened the door on the 2nd night. She saw nothing but fog, no wind, no movement. She stepped out, listened, then closed the door. From that night on, every time she turned a corner in her home, she felt like someone had just left the room before her. Lights flickered. Her cat refused to enter the hallway. And then came the footsteps. Soft, irregular, moving between the walls. Eventually, she stopped sleeping in the bedroom. She moved to the living room couch. And one night, while lying awake at 3:07 a.m., she heard a knock again from the inside of her closet. Another man, in Portugal, installed a motion-activated camera facing his hallway. On the 3rd night, the camera triggered. What it captured was strange. The hallway light stayed off, but the camera saw shadows. 3 vertical silhouettes. Tall, still, they didn't move. But at exactly 3:07, the mic recorded a whisper. "Thank you for opening the door. We didn't know you were listening." Since then, he claims every time he blinks in the dark, he sees the outline of a hand against the other side of his eyelid. The door itself is always different. Different homes, different materials. Some modern, some ancient, but the sound is always the same. 3 knocks. Not loud, but heavy, like knuckles wrapped in linen, as if whatever is knocking doesn't want to break the door, just be let in. And sometimes, it doesn't matter if the door is opened or not. A man in rural Japan reinforced his home with steel locks and cameras. On the 3rd night, he didn't answer. He didn't even get up. But the next morning, his entryway rug had wet footprints on it, leading not into the house, but deeper into the hallway. Specialists analyzed audio recordings from multiple homes around the world. The knocks were nearly identical in tone and rhythm, regardless of building material, climate, or environment. When the frequencies were converted into a visual waveform, a pattern emerged, a shape, like an ear, as if the knocking itself wasn't just sound, but a listening mechanism, a scan, searching for something that would respond. Several people who answered the knock report similar dreams afterward. They're in their childhood home, except it's reversed like a mirror image. They open the front door, and standing on the porch is themselves, but older, paler, not blinking. And the older version always asks the same question: do you remember which one of us stayed outside? One theory calls it the invitation, a global phenomenon, possibly neurological, possibly supernatural, triggered by liminal awareness, the state between deep sleep and waking. At precisely 3:07 a.m., the mind is vulnerable, open, suggestible. Those who answer the knock, they don't just let something in, they let something out. Others believe the knocks are a test, that some doors aren't just thresholds, but mirrors, and the knocking is your reflection, trying to confirm you're still on the right side. A small community on Reddit has documented cases going back to the 1972nd. In each instance, the 3 knocks were followed by identity shifts. One man claimed he began forgetting how old he was. His wife said he started using words from her late father. One child began referring to a sibling that never existed and insisted they lived in a different house before the knocking. Skeptics point to sleep paralysis, auditory hallucinations, but those who've experienced it agree. The sequence is always exact. Night 1, the knocks begin. Night 2, the knocks change location. Night 3, something enters. But enters what exactly? The last known video from a man in Utah shows him sitting in a chair, watching his front door. The footage loops. He doesn't move. At 3:07, 3 knocks echo. He blinks. Then the camera glitches, freezes, and in the final, flickering frame, he's no longer in the chair, but a voice barely audible whispers from the static. Someone has to answer, and someone has to stay behind. The tape ends. No one has seen him since. And last week, his neighbor received a package. No return address. No note. Inside, a doormat, worn, familiar, and stitched with the words, "Welcome back." It was just a pair of shoes. Old, leather cracked, soles worn thin, stuffed in the back corner of a closet in a second-floor bedroom. The new tenant, a woman named Clara, found them while moving in. She didn't touch them. Didn't even move them. She just closed the door and continued unpacking. That night, she noticed faint marks on the wooden floor outside the closet. Footprints. Small, muddy, barely there. She thought maybe it was old staining from the previous owner. But by the next morning, the prints had moved 5 steps forward, then stopped, like someone had stepped out of the closet and waited. She checked the shoes. Still there. Still unmoved. But the floor told a different story, and that night, the prints returned again, longer this time, leading down the hall, toward the room no one ever wanted to sleep in. The apartment was in Rockwall, Poland, 3rd floor, built in 1938. Solid stone walls, thin wooden floors that creaked with memory. The previous tenant had left in a hurry, no forwarding address, just a few forgotten things, a chipped mirror, some boxes of faded books, and the shoes. The landlord said nothing about them, didn't even mention the room they were found in, the smallest room, with a warped door that never quite shut. Clara, the new tenant, thought little of it at first. The place was cheap, too cheap. She painted over the stains, polished the floors, but no matter how many times she cleaned, the footprints returned, always muddy, always shaped like someone standing still. She tested it, left powder on the floor, chalktust, then flour. Each time, new impressions appear. Too small to be adult, too narrow for a man. The strangest part? There were no outbound tracks, only inbound, from the closet to the room next door, but never back, as if something was moving, but never leaving. Clara tried to ignore it. She moved the shoes to the kitchen, left them beside the trash bin, but the next morning, they were back in the closet, exactly where she found them. This time, the footprints didn't lead into the hallway. They stopped at the foot of her bed. She checked the doors. Locked. Windows sealed. No sign of forced entry. She placed a camera in the hallway, pointed it at the closet, set it to record all night. The footage was still, no movement, but around 3:42 a.m., the camera glitched. Just a flicker, a static frame. Then, a single shot of the hallway, from a lower angle, not from the camera's height, from floor level, as if someone had crawled beneath it or something was looking up. The shoes were visible in the frame, but now they were turned around, facing back toward the closet. Clara froze the footage. There was something behind them, a shape, shadow-wit, barely human, crouched in the corner of the hallway. When she went to check, nothing was there, only the shoes and a new footprint. This one pressed into the chalk so deep, the wood beneath it had splintered. They're men's dress shoes, dark brown, European make, hand-stitched, but frayed along the edges. One sole is worn nearly flat, the other uneven, as if the wearer limped. The left shoe has a small tear near the toe. Inside, a faded scrap of cloth, tucked deep beneath the insole. On it, a name stitched in red thread, not written, but sewn from inside the lining. For when I come back, no brand, no date. But the leather tests older than the building. When examined under blacklight, the shoes revealed faint splash patterns, not blood, not paint, but something biological. In certain angles, they shimmer, reacting not to light, but to sound. When music is played near them, particularly piano, they tilt slightly, as if shifting toward the source, like they're remembering something. A local historian identified the style as mid-century, pre-war, often worn by men in formal portraits, and sometimes buried with them. But these shoes had no soil, no coffin stain, no decay. They'd never been buried, they'd only waited. And every time someone tried to move them far from the building, they returned. Once inside a sealed storage unit, once inside the back of a locked car, always reappearing the next morning. Always dry, always facing the same direction, toward the smallest room in the house, where no one had ever stayed more than a single night. Some believe the shoes are residual, a psychic imprint left behind by someone who died violently or with unfinished business. But others suggest something darker, that the shoes don't belong to a spirit. They are the spirit, or at least what's left of it. A fragment, a vessel. There's a legend among old shoemakers in Eastern Europe of a ritual once performed in silence, where the dying could imprint their final desire into the soles of their shoes. So long as the shoes remained intact, they would keep walking home. But what happens if the home is gone? What happens if it's been turned into someone else's? One investigator tried burning the shoes. They wouldn't ignite, not even smoke. Another placed them in a locked safe. They didn't reappear the next day, but that night, muddy footprints were found leading up the walls of the stairwell and ending at the ceiling above her bed. The current theory among paranormal researchers is that the shoes are linked to a specific room, not haunted, anchored, bound to a place where something was left unfinished. A promise, a sentence, or a final step never taken. Clara moved out. She left the shoes behind. The next tenant stayed just one night. When the landlord came to check in the morning, they were gone. Door wide open, bed undisturbed. The only thing left was a trail of muddy footprints leading from the closet to the room no one rents. And at the end of the trail, the shoes, facing the hallway, as if they were waiting for someone new to follow them. It sat behind glass, on a pedestal, inside a tiny museum no one visited anymore. No label, no name, just a hand-stitched doll with glass eyes, faded blue, cracks in one iris, stitched mouth almost smiling. Every night, the curator would lock the display. Every morning, the doll's head would be turned, slightly, just enough to face the door. Security footage showed nothing. No shadows, no tampering, no movement, but the camera feed glitched. Always between 2 o'clock and 2:04 a.m. That was when the cleaning crew stopped entering the room. That was when one staff member said he felt it. Not the eyes watching him, but the mind behind them. One day, a visitor stared at the doll too long, didn't blink, didn't move. When they finally looked away, they couldn't remember how long they'd stood there, only that the doll's eyes seemed closer than before. And that night, they woke up unable to close their own. The museum was small, privately run, tucked behind a row of shops in a coastal town that hadn't seen tourists in years. Mostly maritime artifacts, old uniforms, shipwreck maps, oddities with no provenance, and in the farthest corner, a glass cabinet. Inside, the doll. No documentation, no donation record. The earliest mention was in a curator's journal from 1981. Child's doll, no markings. Found in storage, glass cracked. Moves during night? At first, staff assumed someone was playing tricks. A loose case, an earthquake tremor, but the case had been reinforced with magnetic locks in 1992. Still, the head turned, sometimes to the door, sometimes toward the stairs, once terrifyingly toward the security camera itself. The cleaning crew began to request transfers. New staff were instructed not to look directly into the doll's eyes. Not for long. Why? Because those who did reported seeing their own reflection, not in the glass of the case, but in the doll's eyes. And sometimes, they weren't alone in that reflection. The first real incident happened on a Tuesday. A school group visited the museum, 10 students, one teacher. They walked past the doll's display, laughing, pointing, tapping the glass. One child, a girl named Eliza, stared longer than the rest. She leaned in. Her breath fogged the case, and she whispered something. "I know you." No one heard it at the time, but it was caught faintly on a secondary mic, the one used for the maritime tour recordings. That night, the doll's case was found open. No signs of forced entry. No alarms triggered. The lock was still intact, just unlatched. The doll remained inside, same posture, same cracked eyes, except now, one hand was resting on the glass from the inside. The next day, Eliza didn't come to school. She was found in her bed, still breathing, but unresponsive. Eyes wide open, pupils fully dilated. Doctors said her body was alive, but her brain activity had gone dark, as if someone had turned off the switch from the inside. A week later, the museum curator received an envelope, no return address. Inside, a photo, a black and white image of the doll, but the face in the photo had changed, slightly, subtly. Unmistakably, the mouth had parted, and the eyes were Elisa's. The doll stands just under 40 centimeters tall, stuffed with straw, threadbare fabric body, arms slightly uneven, left hand stitched backward, 4 fingers, no thumb. Its head is ceramic, hair, real but not synthetic. Analysis revealed human keratin, unidentifiable DNA. The glass eyes are asymmetrical, one cloudy, the other fractured but not from impact. The crack is internal, like a vein etched under pressure from within. One eye socket is slightly misaligned, as if the face was repaired or altered. On the back, beneath the collar, is a small stitch tag, a red circle drawn in ink. Under blacklight, it reveals a series of characters, a date, possibly. Dectri. Retaken. No one knows what that means. The doll emits no EMF, no heat signature, but when left in rooms overnight, analog clocks often stop. Only analog. Digital remains unaffected. One staff member who handled the doll without gloves found a faint circle-shaped bruise on her wrist the next morning. A perfect ring, like a child's grip. It faded in 2 days, but she started speaking in her sleep, mumbling in a voice not her own. Her roommate recorded it. The words, slowed down and filtered, sounded like, "You saw me, now I can see you." Since then, no one has touched the doll directly. It's kept sealed in reinforced glass, surrounded by motion sensors, and never left alone. Still, every morning, its head is turned, and the eyes are pointed toward whoever unlocked the museum door that day. Some say the doll was a vessel, not for a spirit, but for something unfinished, a grief, a memory, a gaze that was never returned. Folklorists point to regional myths about mirror dolls in Eastern Europe, objects crafted not to resemble someone, but to trap the likeness of someone being forgotten. The idea wasn't possession, it was preservation. But the question becomes, who or what is the doll preserving now? Paranormal researchers attempted to test the doll in a controlled setting. Multiple high-speed cameras, infrared, magnetometers. Nothing moved, but on every camera, at precisely 3:03 a.m., there was a single frame drop. And when the frames were interpolated, a figure appeared, only a blur. But the blur had eyes, not like the doll. Human, alive, wide open. That week, the lead technician began dreaming of a small room, barrow walls, locked door, and a single chair in the center. In the chair, someone sitting completely still, too still, and on the floor beside them, a doll facing the chair. He began waking with blood in his ears. Doctors found nothing, but he stopped sleeping, and eventually, he stopped speaking entirely. The museum remains open. The doll still sits in its case, still turns to face the first visitor each day. One guest, unaware of the rumors, took a photo. In the picture, the doll is smiling, but when they showed the photo to a friend, the friend pointed at something else. In the reflection of the glass, there's a second figure just behind the photographer, too tall to be a child, too pale to be alive, and its mouth was stitched shut. The guests checked the next morning. Their camera was wiped, but in their gallery app, one photo had been restored, the doll, and beneath it, auto-labeled by their phone's AI, you. It was just a mirror, cheap, fogged around the edges, bolted to the bathroom wall of a rundown rental flat. Tenants came and went. None stayed long. None left a forwarding address. But each one said the same thing. There's someone else in the reflection. Not always clear, not always obvious, but present, just beyond the shoulder. Sometimes sitting, sometimes standing, always still. And when they turned around, no one was there. But the figure in the glass, it never looked away. What disturbed them most wasn't what it did, but how it changed. It shifted with their emotions. When they were anxious, it leaned closer. When they cried, it smiled. And once, when someone laughed, the figure clapped. The apartment was in Glasgow, Scotland. Basement level, flickering, hallway light, water stains like shadows creeping down the ceiling. No one stayed longer than a few months. Each tenant reported plumbing issues, mold, or noise complaints. But always one room mentioned in hushed tones, the bathroom. It was small, too small to fit a mirror that size, nearly 4 feet tall, oval-shaped, screwed directly into the wall, old, unlabeled, frame cracked, like it had been pried off another surface. Maintenance refused to touch it. One worker tried to remove it. His drill died, twice. Another man, after spending 10 minutes alone in the room, requested a different shift. He didn't explain why. He just said, "It knew I wasn't looking at myself." The room had no natural light, and yet, in the mirror, tenants sometimes saw a faint glow behind the reflection, a soft orange hue, like a lamp flickering in another room, a room not part of the apartment. When a photographer tenant tried to document it, her camera wouldn't focus on the glass. It captured the bathroom. It captured the sink. But the mirror came out black, as if it were a window, not a reflection. She left the next week. The most disturbing incident came from a tenant named Owen, mid-32nd. Quiet, logical, freelance graphic designer. He moved in after the last renter broke their lease without warning. For weeks, everything seemed normal, until he began noticing something off. Each time he brushed his teeth, he'd glance up and see someone in the mirror behind him, just out of focus. A figure sitting on the closed toilet seat, legs crossed, chin tilted upward. He assumed it was sleep deprivation, late hour, too much caffeine. Until one night, he saw the figure raise its hand. Before he did, he froze, raised his own arm. The reflection didn't move, just watched. It didn't mimic him, it waited. The next day, Owen covered the mirror with a blanket. That night, he dreamt of the bathroom, but flipped upside down. He was standing on the ceiling, looking down into the mirror from above. In the glass, the figure stared up at him, but now it was smiling. When he awoke, the blanket had fallen, and a single handprint from the inside of the mirror was smeared across the glass. Long fingers. Too long, he called the landlord. They said no one had ever reported anything like this before. But when Owen searched online, he found a forum post from 2009. Different tenant, same address. The last sentence of the post? He's not in the mirror anymore. He's in the reflection of my eyes. The mirror is old, far older than the apartment itself. Art historians identified the frame design as early 19th century, possibly Eastern European. Carved into the wood along the inner lip are faint etchings, half-erased letters, as if someone tried to file them off. Only one word remains legible, Ziran, an archaic word, meaning reflection of one who sees from beyond. The silvering on the back is imperfect. Under certain lighting, the mirror seems to ripple slightly, like a surface of water trying not to move. A team from a local university once borrowed it for optical analysis. Within the lab, 3 researchers examined the mirror under various wavelengths. None of them reported seeing anything unusual, but when they returned the mirror 2 days later, each one began to report sleep disturbances. All 3 described the same dream, a hallway with no end, dimly lit, with a mirror at the far end. They'd approach and see someone else walking toward them, wearing their own face. But blinking out of sync, the glass itself is unusually cold. Always. Even when the bathroom is humid or warm, thermal scans show it holding a constant temperature several degrees below ambient air, like it's absorbing something. Several tenants have claimed that if you stare at the mirror long enough, you'll begin to notice small differences in your reflection. A mole missing, an eye blinking too late, a jaw that moves slightly when yours doesn't, and the longer you watch, the more your reflection begins to act like someone else entirely. One tenant taped a note to the glass that read, "If you're not me, don't smile." The next morning, the note was gone, and the reflection was grinning. Folklorists believed the mirror could be a relic of a lost funerary tradition, an anchor meant to trap the final echo of the dead so they wouldn't wander. Instead, it may have become a bridge, allowing something not quite dead to observe the living. Some call it a latch mirror, a reflective object that doesn't just show what's behind you, but what wants to be behind you. There are stories across cultures. Reflections that blink too late, faces that age ahead of you, mirrors that hum in silence. But this one is different. Psychologists suggest it may be a trigger for pareidolia or derealization, that the mind fills in gaps, inventing figures in response to trauma or loneliness. But those explanations fall apart when multiple people see the same figure, same height, same posture, same pale, round face with dark, expressionless eyes. One researcher claimed the entity is not mimicking us. It's rehearsing, learning, practicing our behavior until it gets the rhythm right, until it knows how to be you. A few tenants covered the mirror permanently, others moved out, but the landlord never replaced it. He says it's just a mirror, nothing more. But when asked if he's ever looked into it himself, he simply replied, "I don't use that bathroom. Not since I saw myself blinking after I turned away." The street numbers go from 7 to 9 to 11. Even-numbered houses line the opposite side. But between 9 and 11, there's a gap, just a patch of wild grass. No sidewalk, no mailbox, no house, but residents say they've seen it. Not always, not clearly, but some nights. From the right angle, there's a porch light, dim, flickering, yellow, and every morning, the mailman stops, walks into the space, disappears for a moment, then reemerges, empty-handed. When asked, he simply says, "It's always been there. Someone lives there. They always get mail." One curious neighbor tried following him one day. He never came back. The next morning, the man's kitchen table had a package on it. No return address. Just a white envelope taped to the top, written in red ink, to the new occupant of House Zero. The neighborhood was quiet, planned, symmetrical. Every house built in the late 1982nd, same builder, same permits, same layout, except the space between 9 and 11. It wasn't always empty. Old zoning documents list a foundation poured in 1991, but new construction followed. No records of a house ever being finished. No blueprints. No sale. Just a concrete slab that eventually disappeared beneath the weeds. Kids say the patch of land feels colder than the rest of the street. Dogs won't step onto it. One child threw a tennis ball into the lot and said it never hit the ground. It just vanished, like the space swallowed it whole. Street view images blur at that point, not by algorithm, by era. One frame shows a fence that's not there. Another, a window floating in the air. One night, a new resident, curious and skeptical, left a piece of mail addressed to House Zero inside their own mailbox. The next morning, it was gone. 3 days later, they received a letter in return, typewritten, no greeting, just one sentence: "You live too close." The man who disappeared, the one who followed the mailman, was named Elliot Brandt, tech consultant, amateur urban explorer. He'd lived on the street for 3 months, kept to himself, until he noticed the mailman's routine, always the same. 7:59 a.m. Enter the patch of grass between house 9 and 11. 8:01 a.m. Exit hands empty, face blank. Elliot began documenting it. Notes, photos. Then one day, he decided to follow. He texted a friend at 7:55, going to walk behind him. Let's see what's actually there. He was never seen again. No signs of struggle, no calls, no phone. No footprints on the lawn. His house was untouched except for the kitchen table. On it, a plain white package. Inside, a mailbox key, a slip of paper, and a photo. The photo showed a house Victorian style. Peeling paint, curtains drawn, address plaque, Zero at the bottom of the paper. This is not your house, but you are in it now. 2 weeks later, neighbors reported strange mail arriving. Empty envelopes, no stamps, no return addresses. Only a message, typed on old yellow paper, to be forwarded. And inside, a mirror fragment. When pieced together, it formed a full pane of glass. But the reflection it gave wasn't of the room it was in. It showed a hallway with 13 doors. And at the end, Elliot, staring, mouth open, not blinking. There is no visible structure, no foundation, no plumbing, no roof. But every few weeks, someone reports seeing it, just for a moment, out of the corner of their eye. A porch light, a window shutter blowing in wind that doesn't exist, and the mailbox, always the same, rusted black, flag up, door slightly ajar. People who pass by late at night sometimes hear it creak open, then slam shut, even when there's no wind, even when there's no box. The mail itself is stranger, letters and languages the recipient doesn't speak, but somehow understand, packages addressed to names they don't recognize, until days later, when they dream about someone calling them by that exact name. One envelope contained a key, shaped like no lock in any modern home, along with a short note, in case you forget where you live. Another arrived with a floor plan, but it was wrong. The walls curved in impossible ways. The dimensions violated physics. One room repeated 6 times in the diagram, a loop, at the center, a chair, and above the chair, in smudged handwriting, return to sender. Some theorize the house exists in a folded corner of reality, only visible when someone tries to acknowledge it. A spatial parasite, not a haunted location, but a concept that hijacks the rules of occupancy. You don't move into House Zero, it moves into you. And the mail? It's not communication, it's confirmation that it knows your name, that it knows your hands, that it's waiting for you to open the door that was never built, but always there. Some say House Zero is a tear in space, a blind spot in reality's geometry, where structure bends and address means nothing. Others say it's a placeholder, a gap in the universe reserved for those who've stepped outside the narrative, people who were supposed to disappear, but didn't. Historians found property tax records from the 1942nd showing a home at that location. It was condemned, burned, erased, but fire inspectors noted something strange in the report. No visible remains, no foundation. Yet the mailbox continued to receive letters for 26 years after. A psychic once tried to read the location. She collapsed before reaching the grass. Later, she described a vivid image, a hallway with no exit, Every door leads to another version of the same room, and in the mirror of each one, someone is already inside. One mailman eventually quit. He left behind his route notebook. Inside, pages filled with notes from the space between houses 9 and 11. One entry simply read, "She opened the door today. I wasn't supposed to see her face." Another, the envelope blinked. But the final note, written in shaking pen, "I think I delivered myself." Since then, the lot remains unchanged. But every few months, a new family moves into the neighborhood, and one of them always says the same thing, "I swear I saw a light on," where nothing is. And in the morning, on their welcome mat, a small white envelope to the new resident of House 0. "Do not return this letter. It already knows where you live."